All right. So as you can see, we got a new look for today's interview, but I'm really excited. We've got a returning guest, my man, Mr. Fred Van Lente. Last time we spoke, we were dealing with the resurgence of the Valiant universe, and you've been pretty busy since then. You're working on The Future is Censored over at Recca Comics,
Right.
and now we've got this relaunch of Peter Cannon Thunderbolt here at Dynamite to talk about. But yeah, aside from being busy, man, how have you been?
I've been great. It's been a good year. Had a really nice time. Working on a lot of projects, done a lot of traveling. I feel very lucky and happy to wake up every day and do this. So it's a real gift.
For sure. It's fun to like I can't think of another job where I would be taken seriously coming to work dressed as a Power Ranger. but here I am, and I'm the serious voice on this interview. So
that's right. You're the voice of reason.
Right. Ridiculous is what this is. But so Peter Cannon is not a character that I was familiar with until I saw the press release for this book.
Cool.
And apparently he was a Charlton Comics character. He's bounced around. He was at DC for a while. He's at Dynamite. And then this book in particular has been in the works for a while.
Yes.
So what was your connection to Peter Cannon? Did you grow up a fan of him?
No, I mean, Peter Cannon is probably most famous to mainstream comics creators or comics fans, and I'm certainly among that, he is the inspiration for Ozymandias in Watchmen. As I think a lot of people know, the Watchmen characters are based on Charlton characters, which DC had just acquired. Charlton was a notoriously shady comic book publisher from like the 50s and 60s. Its two founders met in prison, which, is always, a place. I think one of them was in for fraud. They were all like really terrible. One of them was a mobster. One of them was in prison for fraud. And so the Charlton comics basically existed to keep various printing presses in Connecticut running and laundering money for the New England mob. So Charlton Comics is one of the most fascinating comics companies in history for that reason. And they lasted for a long time. And they had some great, one of my all-time favorite, I actually have a trade, Dark Horse, but this is Space Western was one of their comics from the early 1950s. If you pick up this trade, which came out last year for Dark Horse, it's amazing. Can't recommend it enough. It's completely bananas. And their most famous character is probably Steve Ditko, who, after he gave Stan Lee the middle finger and left Marvel Comics, wound up there where he created a new version of Captain Atom. He most famously created the Ted Kord version of Blue Beetle, who's a character that was from the Golden Age and bounced around a bunch of places. But another one of the big creators was a writer-artist by the name of Pete Morisi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but he was a New York City police officer, either directly before or directly after he created comics. And what his most famous creation, I think, arguably, is Peter Cannon Thunderbolt, who, like a lot of 20th century, superpowered characters, kind of follow the trope of what I like to call white guy gets Asian powers. Like they go to the Himalayas, the Shadow, Iron Fist, Dead Man to a certain degree. It's just a long green llama, right? I can just go on and on and on about tourists who go to the Himalayas and learn these incredible, like either martial arts or mind control techniques. And so the shtick with Peter Cannon was he went to this Himalayan monastery where he learned incredible martial arts techniques and mental techniques. And he went back to America to fight this evil guy, the Hooded One, who was this guy who was like the evil version of like the evil guy who got passed over for Peter Cannon, was pissed off about it, went to go try to, and it was basically, interrupted his plans for world domination. For you Iron Fist fans out there, he's sort of, the Hooded One is kind of the equivalent of the Steel Serpent, right? Or somebody who got betrayed by the monks. And Peter Cannon's series only lasted 6 issues, but it's notably for being exceptionally insane. Like, he fights dinosaurs rampaging through America with kung fu, as one should. His most famous adversary was an evil mummy. Her name was Evelia or Evila. It's very subtle, you know.
Right.
So Peter's gone through a bunch of different revisions, but Pete Morisi retained the rights. So he briefly he had his own DC series. As I said, he's the inspiration for Ozymandias, who also trained in the East, right? As another one comes from that tradition and was, mental and physical perfection. But Dynamite acquired the license, and he appeared in a zombie series I did for Dynamite called Die! Namite. 4th season, Blood Red, currently on stands, in conjunction with Peter Cannon. And so I did a series for that. And so Jonathan Lau drew this entire series like years ago. This is like 2021. And for reasons I will admit I don't understand, it's just appearing now. But sort of the idea behind it is I wanted to kind of I guess I felt like sending the guy. So I have another white guy gets Asian powers character is Obadiah Archer.
Yes.
Who was kind of like who was from Valiant, obviously. He was kind of like this Harry Krishna when Barry Windsor Smith and Jim Shooter and those guys came with him. But I don't know anything about the Harry Krishnas. And but I was raised Christian, so I can make fun of Christians because I have some experience with it. And so we made Archer a homegrown, Christian assassin, fundamentalist Christian assassin, which really seemed to fit his character quite well. Peter Cannon is similar, except that instead of going to the Himalayas, he was raised in this kind of kung fu cult in upstate New York. I'm reading a lot about cults, and so he was raised in a compound, out in the Adirondack somewhere, as opposed to the Himalayas. The series comes from like a desire to sort of talk about this character in a new context of where we have a lot of like whether it's podcasts or whether it's cults, we have a lot of competing versions of reality going on right now.
Yeah.
Which is like a lot different than I think the mainstream media of decades past. And so Peter Cannon believes that unlike the popular story about his cult, which was supposedly killed in a Jonestown-esque mass suicide, if you know anything about Jonestown, you know that mass suicide was not really necessarily a mass suicide either. They had some help from Jones's followers. He's on revenge of the leader of that cult who escaped the massacre and is running around New York City. And that's the hooded one. And he recruits a girl who grew up initially at the cult in the compound with him, who escaped with her parents or left with her parents, who goes by the name of Taboo, who longtime Thunderbolt fans will know that was Thunderbolt's sidekick in the original series. And he believes the leader of the cult is the hooded one and is out basically expanded his cult and is kind of taking a lot of the elite in society. And I don't want to give too much more than that because there's a big twist at the end of the first issue about the true nature of the hooded one. But did that answer your question, BJ? Sorry, I talked for a solid 10 minutes there. I'm going to let you break in now.
You're good. It's funny. I was going to ask you, just being a fan of history, right? Like, I think most writers have to be good readers first.
Yes.
Right? So most writers
100%.
are at the very least fans or can appreciate something about, all the iterations that come before. Right? Yeah. I would consider you a historian. You quite literally wrote the comic book history of comics.
Yep.
Right. And so even just going through this brief history of Charlton characters and the company and all the inspirations, right? For me, it would feel daunting to try to add something to the legacy of whatever it is. Right.
Sure.
But for you, what I'm hearing is like almost an excitement to, in some ways, reimagine, reinterpret, and then add to. Um, how would you describe your sort of approach to that?
I'm kind of a sponge. I liked, so the main thing, since I really did not know much about Peter Cannon other than Ozymandias' connection when Dynamite asked me to put him in the zombie series. So I basically just read all the Charlton stuff, which again, it's 6 issues. The trade paperback is like that big, that thick. So it's not like it's a huge daunting challenge or anything. And you just kind of try to figure out what is the most, like what's the hook? What distill it down to sort of its purest essence. And as long as you retain that essence, you can kind of run wild with it, and I think I identified the same thing Alan Moore probably did, which is the idea that this is that it's not just kung fu, right? It's there's a mental conditioning, there's the spiritual aspect of it. I do a book called Action Philosophers, so I'm always been fascinated by Eastern philosophy, so injecting that into the series whenever possible is a good thing. There's always that philosophical aspect of kung fu that I think the best stories in that genre evoke. And so I think the key, I just do a lot of reading, like you said, reading is fundamental to writing. And I just try to I put it in the, like, it's like making, like whiskey or something, right? Just try to distill it into the vat, into its purest form.
Right. So, checking out issue 1, again, having no previous knowledge of Peter Cannon, I very much enjoyed the feet jokes. Like that was
right.
I think just the quippiness in general is like what kind of hooked me into that issue, and then it was just fun. It was a fun debut issue for me. Now you mentioned that we wrote this a while back. The series has been drawn. Jonathan Lau, who is Dynamite fans you'll know from Space Ghost most recently, David Pepose. But he drew this a while back. Now that it's out, right? I feel like a lot of times we get in this sort of monthly comics schedule where like the book is not released that much later than when you wrote it, right? But in this sense, there's been a lot of time that's passed. So is there something that, like, looking back on it, you feel like, maybe I've grown in this area, or maybe I would have done it differently than now? Or did you have a chance to kind of punch it up?
I did, although as I said, this was originally conceived as a graphic novel on Kickstarter. So Jonathan, I was able to see the whole series, right?
Nice.
And I at the risk of sounding egotistical, I thought it was great. But as you say, that's not always, I don't always feel that way. A lot of stuff you're like, but I don't know. I just really like the sort of milieu of the character, and there's a romance element that I added that I think really sings and really gives this a different kind of feel from a lot of other comics. Like I don't like sidekicks. I don't like, I like equals, right? So that's why making Taboo Peter's equal and his love interest, I think, is kind of something that resonates in me. Like I prefer partners, right, as opposed to, or equals as opposed to, the Batman, Robin, Green Hornet, Kato kind of relationship. But no, I read it to do the lettering script because it was inked but not colored, I don't think, and it hadn't been lettered yet. But I was like, oh, this is really good. I was just getting into the story, to the point where I forgot to comment. I was that absorbed in it, which is a good sign,
Yeah, no, for sure. I think obviously, like, we all would hope that anything we create can have a timeless nature to it. So it's like I wouldn't, like, I don't know. I look at interviews, right, and I feel like I'm constantly obsessing over, I could have asked this question better, or I'm notorious for setting up my questions with like essays that I feel like lead to a specific answer. I'm like, I should probably leave it more open-ended, right? So like, there's always room to critique ourselves, but I love that you could go back and revisit it and be like, no, I'm proud of that. I love that. Yeah. Now, I do wonder though, like how much of that do you feel like is because there was not as much material to sort of try to stay faithful to or distill down? Like, I don't know. I assume it's easier to do that with like a 6 issue trade paperback than like, I don't know, how can I say something new or fun or interesting about Batman?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, a lot of this kind of comes from, I was at Marvel for many years, and the way Marvel basically works is very rarely do you just sort of get to go in and pitch your idea, and they do it. Usually the editor comes to you and says, try this for Spider-Man. We want to do an X-Men noir series. We want, this and that. And so then you kind of have to roll with the punches and hit the ball where it's pitched, This was a little bit different. And so that sort of trains you to be kind of out of the box and sort of think, creatively is the wrong word, but be kind of really responsive to new ideas. And I think that, again, when the approach is to distill this thing down to an essence and tell the story, it is easier. I think building off on what you originally said is that it is easier when you are doing essentially a reboot than, if I had to, like Kieran Gillen, I think did the most recent Thunderbolt series for Dynamite. I think if I had to build off what Kieran did, that would have been more challenging, but enough time had gone between the two series that Dynamite felt like, okay, let's just do a new take.
Mm. So I'll ask you, because we can't get super deep because we don't want to spoil things for people. But for someone who's like on the fence about checking out Peter Cannon, what would you say that he adds to the comics space that you may not get with a different character?
Well, there is he's an interesting character because he's both kind of a fish out of water coming to New York City and dealing with that for the first time, having lived in a cult for as long as he has. So there is that kind of fun aspect to it. And I would just say, and I mean, this was, why I was so excited about it. Jonathan Lau just crushed it. Like Jonathan Lau should not be allowed to do anything other than Kung Fu books, in my opinion. He's so good at it. So particularly if you're digging his work on Space Ghost, which I agree is fantastic. I mean, you have to get Thunderbolt because he's the main attraction as far as I'm concerned. I'm just there to, put words in the balloons.
For sure. No, Jonathan is absolutely an attraction all to himself. And I don't know. The comics are so interesting to me.
There's a fight. Sorry, just real quick. There's a fight in the second issue on a train with ninjas. It's just insane. Jonathan just crushed it. Like, but you may not understand unless you get the first issue. So,
Right. So the first issue, by the way, has been out for like 2 weeks. Came out November 12th.
Okay.
As we're recording this. Issue 2 will be out. I want to say we got a month break. Nope, I lied. Issue 2's out December 17th.
Okay.
So
cool.
you got some time, a little bit of time.
That's right.
Final order cutoff for issue 3, by the way, is December 8th.
Okay.
So there's time for you to run into your shops, get whatever issues are on shelves, but then also subscribe so that you get the full miniseries without having to worry about other people taking it first, worrying about scarcity and whatnot.
Other people, just rough.
Right. Right. But I think that's one of the things I love about comics is that it's so collaborative, right? Like, because this story, like, I don't know, people like often we get stories in comics and we refer to them by, oh, this is Bendis's Avengers or Hickman's Avengers and so on.
Sure.
And it's like, but it's not really the singular vision of a writer. Like there's so much that's added depending on who you have as your artist. So all of that to 100%. Sing Jonathan's praises, because I feel like this book would look a lot different if anyone else drew it, which I guess is obvious, but my point is it's cool. I like that about comics.
Agreed.
So with Peter Cannon, we've got that going, but like I said, you've had a busy year. Shout out to my friends over at Prana DM Solutions for putting me on to The Future is Censored. I don't know how we get around that title on my PG channel, but
it's The Future is asterisks. I don't know if that's visible to people on the screen, but yes, I'm wearing some official Future is merch. This is going to be the cover of our Free Comic Book Day book and it was done by Paul Pope. So that was pretty cool. Paul is not easy to get, so it was very cool that he agreed to do a cover for us.
So talk to us about the Futures Asterisks. What's the premise of this series?
So the future is kind of, it's Mission Impossible meets Black Mirror. It's set a few decades into the future in which we've gotten rid of our phones and the internet is beamed directly into our eyes, which I think is, both wonderful and terrifying. Essentially there were hacker wars and the bad guys won, and our heroes, which go by the name of Black Mountain, are a bunch of renegade hackers out saving people and protecting people from technological nightmares. Our first issue, which came out in May, did very well. It was a quadruple sized comic. It's like an 80-page comic about them foiling a human trafficking ring in a casino on the moon.
Wow.
And then we followed with our most recent arc just concluded. But the good news is that if you're curious by everything I just said, the first 8 issues, which is over 200 pages of comics, our first trade, volume 1, called Black Mountain, is out in mid-December for the stupefyingly low price of $9.99. So you can hop on board and you won't miss a thing. And I believe the 8th issue, which is our third arc, begins that same day, same pub date. So so it's been super awesome. Recca is a terrific company to work for. It's hacker spelled backwards. They're the publishing arm of Black Hills Information Security, which is an InfoSec company that really does a lot of innovative marketing things. And basically this project sort of started out as telling real life stories of hackers. These people are white hat hackers, by which I mean, like casinos and banks hire them to break into their systems, right? To test them. But then sort of Black Hills realized that they can't legally talk about their clients because of NDAs. And obviously if we told real stories about how you could break into places, that might not, go over too well. Right. So they came up with the idea of doing the future. And so we just have a really interesting series with a really interesting cast, ragtag team of hackers, Motley Crue, the Avengers of the Nerd Avengers, they're called sometimes by their enemies, and perhaps sometimes by their friends. And it's just been really fun to do. And we're chugging along. And the really neat thing is that Recca has committed. This is going to be a 60-issue series, 60.
Wow.
So I'll be doing this for a while and really building out this incredible world and doing this terrific world building.
So Recca being an arm of like a whole different company, right? I guess we're used to corporate comics at this point with Marvel and Disney and DC and Warner and all that, right? But I feel like it would seem to the outsider that this 60-issue commitment is an actual 60-issue commitment. And so I wonder how different that is for you versus like, all right, we'll green light 5 and see where it goes from there. Like how
Cannon is 3.
Yeah. So it's like how do you approach storytelling when you have such a long runway to do it?
It's daunting, but we have a great team. You mentioned Prana, Adam Freeman's company that is sort of co-running the editorial side of it. And we have story meetings. I've written through issue 20, so they're the way there. So it's all happening. But yeah, it's a big canvas. But I think you just do it through character development and world building. We have a really interesting world. We don't have people like typing on keyboards. That would be a real snooze fest. Instead, people interact with the internet through things called sprites, which are sort of like I ripped off from Philip Pullman of Golden Compass fame. They're like little animal characters that interact with the internet with them. People really have taken to that. And one of our characters actually is a machine intelligence. In the future, the term artificial intelligence is considered offensive. Huh. So they're called machine intelligences. They're very touchy about this. Like, why am I artificial? Like, I was made. You were made. You had a mom and a dad. You didn't just, you weren't here when history began. So they got very angry about that. So we have one machine intelligence who is got a lot of emotional problems. So he needs an emotional support animal. So he has a dog, like an actual physical dog, and he lives on the collar of the dog. So it's in reverse, right? The sprite has an animal companion. that
Right.
that helps him deal with the real world. Is this emotional support animal. So that's the kind of like world building I'm talking about and sort of interesting character work. But it's also kick-ass adventure stories. And I should say that they came with this title. The future is asterisk, 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 6 asterisks, right? And so these asterisks, each individual issue. So they're really encouraging folks to go into the comic stores.
Mhm.
Jason Blanchard, who's one of the main guys at Recca, who's used to be a comics retailer. He had a store in Florida. And so he's really trying to get people to come into the comic stores. So each title of the comic, each issue, these 6 asterisks, the 6 characters have a different code word. And one of the many challenges, many hacking challenges in the book that if you want, you can try and solve them. There's actually a leaderboard on the Recca site where people are competing to see who solves the most challenges. And one of the challenges every issue is there's a different code word in each issue. So even though I can't get my wife to say the non-naughty word version, technically, each issue of the future there's a different 6-letter phrase.
Oh, that's great.
To it. Like, I don't think this is spoilers, but like, I think the first issue, which is on the moon, it was lunar. No, right. Was the code word. The future is lunar. So what the future is, each issue is different.
Got you. That's funny. So it's like the future. I don't know. I guess I saw the stars and I just assume it's censored, right?
DJ, everyone does. Literally everyone does.
So, and maybe that's just we've terrible conditioning from all of us.
But, well, I think the original idea was that it was almost supposed to be like a prompt, right? Like how a Google prompt gives you different options, but in a static graphic design image, that's can be challenging to get across.
True. But I guess looking at the asterisks, it makes sense for it to be a hacking based book, right? Like when you type in the word, you're not going to see the word. You'll see the asterisk as opposed to, I don't know, a blank or, I don't know, a bar or what have you.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's cool.
But people talk about it, and so it's serving its purpose, right?
Right. For sure. Now, it's funny because like just from our conversations and the works I've seen from you, I typically associate you with historical projects. Okay. So for you to be working on a book that is set in the future, like how is it playing with, creating future tech ideas?
Well, Black Hills, like we have a large team and they send me lots of stuff to read. So like they send me one book on Second Sight, which is about AR or augmented reality.
Yeah.
Which, Oculus and the Google glasses and all that stuff, like if you've ever played Pokemon Go, you've done augmented reality because it's
like a virtual interface over your real world.
Exactly. Except we've, in our future, done away with the phone.
Okay.
The intermarried the phone. You just interact. That's just how you interact with reality. And obviously, because it's a comic book, everything has to be very visual and very visually striking and interesting. And that was the obvious way to do it. But yeah, I mean, people just send me random articles, science, like Robert Heinlein's The Moon is Our Mistress is a novel I was recommended to when you did the Moon book. The future is always happening, right? So there's always new technologies to look at. And so it's like, it's the same, it's maybe the same level of research. But the challenge is not to do something that, and this is partly why I think the series works, is because we're not getting into the nitty gritty of the actual like hacking procedures themselves, because I think the lay person reader would just like, their eyes would cross and they'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I think secondly, more importantly, these things are tech is constantly updating itself.
Yeah.
And you don't want to do something that's going to be instantaneously obsolete,
I will say, all right, like I'm dressed like a Power Ranger right now. I've got my Apple Watch on, right? I could talk into it, summon Alpha 5 if I wanted to.
I'm wearing my own merch, so I'm not sure which one of us is needs to be criticized more.
Right. Well, it's just funny. I think about it like I am wearing the reality that I wished for as a kid, right? Like communicator watches. My mom called me and and I answered the phone with my watch out of convenience because I didn't want to reach in my pocket. I had a baby in my hand. And it's like, that's crazy. Because when I was a kid, all I wanted to do was this. But
come in.
Right, come in. Why would everybody say come in? But it's crazy how quickly technology is moving.
Yeah.
Like, because they've got the Apple Vision Pros, which still look ridiculous on people's heads. But I remember that prototype Google Glass thing was like the little square. Now you've got the Meta Ray-Ban glasses that actually are stylish, and they just came out with one that's got a screen on it. And it's like, you can't tell that someone is looking at a screen while they're talking to you. They've got live translation and all that stuff. Like, with the speed that technology is moving at now, like, how creative do you have to be to come up with something that you don't feel like will be obsolete in a year?
Well, just sort of merging the Google Glass and the Pokemon Go of it all, the other sort of logical, extensions of this is if, you can have Pokemon, on the street, I can have a skin for myself, right? So I can look how I want to look. How challenging is it to know whether you're talking to person? Does that person look like that? Sometimes it's obvious. Like, we have one guy who just walks around and he's a cat. He's a character. He's one of the enemies called the Stray. So he kind of looks like Black Sod, right? If you know that French comics character.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're talking to a 7-foot tall cat, that's probably not what this person actually looks like.
Right.
but other people, it's extremely hard to tell, right? I mean, it's a golden age of our future is a golden age of sort of deception and having total control over the information system, literally down to how other people look at you, literally you can control. And I think that's very helpful for some people. We have a character who's neurodivergent, and he uses a lot of AI help to sort of help him navigate a world that would otherwise be very kind of irksome. They would range from irksome to threatening. But then we also obviously have a lot of bad actors, and that's what the Black Mountain people are going after.
Got you. This is really exciting now. It's funny how much you just see something on like an email inbox or whatever, you see it, and it's like, okay, I might check that out. The fact that this trade paperback you can get for less than you could get issue 1 for now is insane. Like, so the future is trade paperback.
Really want people to read it.
Right. So, and you said that comes out mid-December.
Yes, I want to say it is probably
awesome.
The 10th or the 17th.
I will say the asterisks do not help me in the search engine, but
yes, I think they might have thought that through a little bit better. God damn it! It's 60 issues. We're gonna make it work. It's gonna be legendary.
I found it. Okay, December 10th.
Okay.
Volume 1's out December 10th.
From Lunar, yeah.
Yes. And it contains the first 7 issues.
Right. Which is somewhat misleading because the first issue is quadruple size. So it's technically like 11, more like 11, almost a year's worth of issues in one trade.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, there's
and it's in that, it's in the DC's finest, kind of, it's not digest, but it's a slightly
the thick compact trade.
Yeah. Nice. It's going to be a good looking package. I'm excited.
That's going to be cool. Yeah, I'll definitely need to see if my shop can special order that since FOC is passed, but I need that. So, all right. So we've got the future is Peter Cannon Thunderbolt is out right now. And like you said, the future is greenlit for like 60 issues. So you'll be working on that for, at least 40 more issues.
That's right.
In the can.
That's right. Exactly.
What other projects, what other irons do you have in the fire right now we should be looking out for?
Well, I have my obligatory projects I can't talk about, which I'm doing a lot of work in. I mentioned Action Philosophers. The new Kickstarter for that this is the colorizing of the original series. So the final volume, Modernity Bites, will be kickstarting in March. It's very exciting. I was working on that today. If you like Valiant from our previous discussion, my all new Harbinger series is currently on the stands. I'm having a lot of fun with that. Really like revisiting those characters and sort of bringing them into a different milieu. And what else? Also out this year was Game Masters, the comic book history of role-playing games. If you're into Dungeons and Dragons, makes a perfect gift. So in June, from me and Tom Fowler and Clover Press. And what else? Murder Kingdom, which is my Walt Disney World giallo. It's a murder mystery. It's a slasher set in Disney World. Is currently out from Mad Cave. Me and Chris Ponda did that. That's a great selection. You can catch up. You can pick up, and that's it.
Nice.
That's 2025. I'll and I guess a little bit of beginning of 2026. But I have some other exciting stuff that I can't wait to talk about.
Yeah, well, you'll have to come back so that we can talk about it. There's always the redacted portion of the interview.
That's right.
So, little teaser next time.
The asterisks part of the interview.
Right. But well, Fred, thank you so much for your time. Again, I will leave links to just a brief spattering of all these comics where you can find them. I'll just leave I'll leave the League of Comic Geeks listings so you can check your local comic shop or your favorite online retailer to grab what all is out available still in the market. And so you can follow Fred on social media. Where can they find you here on the interwebs?
If you could spell my name, that's my website. That's my Blue Sky, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, blah, 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 blah. It's all a little overwhelming on the social media. But I'm just under my name. So
perfect. Well, follow at Fred Van Lente everywhere, or you just look in the description down below. I already made it easy for you. And other than that, we will see you in another episode of Comics Are Dope, the podcast soon. Until then, stay safe, stay awesome, and read something dope today. Peace.